There's a jar on my kitchen table this morning, and inside it is a handful of dried corn that looks like nothing from a store shelf. The kernels are fat and white and wrinkled, and they smell of wood smoke. My grandmother, Ada, cooked corn like this every fall in a cast iron pot over an open fire in these eastern Oklahoma hills. She never called it a recipe. It was just food. But today I would have to drive a long way to find anybody under 70 who makes it. And that jar is one dish from a table that used to be full. There was a bread with no wheat and no yeast. There was a meat that kept a hunter fed for a month with no icebox. There was a soup made from a nut folks now rake into trash bags every October. One by one, they slipped out of American kitchens, and almost nobody wrote them down. So today, I am setting that table again, all 25 dishes. Stay with me to the end, because that corn in my jar carries a secret. My grandmother put one thing in the pot that the modern world decided to skip, and skipping it caused one of the deadliest food disasters in American history. That is not a legend. It is in the record books. When I open that jar at number 25, I will tell you exactly what she put in there and why it mattered so much. I'm Wes Kingfisher. I'm 64 years old. I'm of Cherokee heritage, and I was raised by my grandmother Ada in these hills of eastern Oklahoma, on the same few acres where I live today. She taught me the plants and the kitchen. My grandfather and my uncles taught me the woods, and 40 years on the powwow trail taught me the rest, from the northern plains to the desert southwest. The old ones never wrote this down, so listen close. Now, where does a whole table of food go? It does not vanish overnight. It goes one kitchen at a time. Children of my grandmother's generation were sent away to boarding schools, and many came home with the language and the cooking both faded. Then the ration lines and the commodity boxes arrived. White flour, white sugar, canned meat, and the old foods started looking like poverty instead of the wealth they really were. And there is one more reason, the quiet one. Nobody can sell you a food that grows free in the creek bottoms and the fence rows. There was never a dime in teaching it, so nobody ever did. I am not here to argue about history. I am here to set the table. We start where I started, under the hickory trees behind my grandmother's house. Number 1, Canucci hickory nut soup. Every November, my grandmother Ada spread hickory nuts on a sheet by the wood stove to dry, then cracked them and pounded them, shells and all, in a tall wooden mortar until they packed into a ball about the size of a softball. That ball keeps. When she wanted soup, she dropped it into simmering water, stirred it loose, and strained the shells out through a fine sieve. And what came through was a rich, smoky, creamy broth we call Canucci hickory nut soup, poured hot over hominy or rice. It tastes like pecan pie, and wood smoke shook hands. Folks pay good money for fancy imported nut milks now, while whole hickory trees rain this down on their yards for free every single fall. And keep that jar of corn from my kitchen table in the corner of your eye. We're coming back to it at the end, and what is inside it explains everything. Now, everything I am walking you through today comes out of a book I put together called The Native American Way, 101 Remedies, Skills, and Recipes from the Old Ways. The knowledge my grandmother Ada and the elders of Indian country handed me around 1,000 fires, written down plain, step by step, before it is gone. The backyard plants and how the old ones used them. The teas and salves from Ada's kitchen. The wild foods and when to gather them. Preserving food the old way, fire, shelter, and water. And the recipes that fed the people through every winter. It is $17, marked down from $47, less than one trip down the pharmacy aisle for knowledge that took 10,000 years to test. Now go ahead and grab your phone and open up your camera, the same one you use to take pictures. Point it at that square code on your screen and hold it steady for a second. A little link will pop up, give it a tap, and it will take you straight to the book. And if you are watching on your phone right now, the link is waiting for you right down below in the description. Take your time. There is no rush at all. I'll wait right here. Number 2, Bean bread. Before wheat ever crossed the ocean, my people were making bread in these hills out of cornmeal and brown beans. No yeast, no oven. Ada mixed hot-cooked beans straight into the meal until it held together, shaped it into small flat loaves, wrapped each one in green corn husks, and lowered them into boiling water like little tamales until they set firm. You unwrap a dense, hearty bread that goes with greens and grease like it was born for them, because it was. Now, you might be looking for fry bread on this list. I love fry bread too. But fry bread is barely 160 years old, born out of government ration flour and lard in the hardest of times. Every bread I am showing you today is older than wheat on this continent. And the next one is a bread America lost twice, once from the kitchens and once from the woods themselves. Number 3, chestnut bread. Ada's mother made bean bread's sweeter cousin with American chestnuts, boiled, peeled, and folded into the cornmeal, wrapped in husks the same way. Then, starting around 1904, a fungus came in through New York on imported trees, and over the next 40 years, the chestnut blight killed close to 4 billion American chestnut trees. 4 billion. Whole mountainsides in Appalachia went gray and bare. The tree that fattened the hogs, fed the families, and filled the bread was gone inside a single lifetime. And the recipe starved right along with it. My grandmother made it for me a few times with Chinese chestnuts from a neighbor's yard, and she would hold one up and tell me the old nuts were 3 times that size. You can still make it that way today, and you should, because eating it is the closest thing there is to tasting those lost mountains. Number 4, wild grape dumplings. Along every fence row in this county, there are wild grapes, little dark possum grapes that pucker your mouth in August and turn sweet by September. The old way is to simmer them, strain off the juice, sweeten it, and then drop in thin strips of soft dough and let them cook right in that purple juice until the whole pot is tender, dumplings and hot grape syrup. It still shows up at family dinners around here, but outside these communities, almost nobody alive has tasted it. One warning, and I give it to you plain, the way my uncles gave it to me. There is a vine called moonseed that grows right in among wild grapes, and moonseed is poison. A wild grape carries 2, 3, or 4 round seeds. Moonseed carries one flat seed shaped like a crescent moon. Open a grape and check the seeds before you pick a mess of them, every single time. Number 5, the sour corn drink. Our Muskogee Creek neighbors here in Oklahoma call theirs sofkey, and my people kept a version too. Cracked corn cooked long and slow into a thin porridge, then set by the door in a crock for a few days until it went pleasantly sour, a little like buttermilk. It was the welcome at the door. You walked into a house and somebody handed you a dipper of sofkey before anybody asked your business. Grandmother sipped it warm at sunrise. Babies were weaned on it. It fed the sick and the healthy from the same crock, and it asked for nothing but corn, water, and patience. There are elders in this state tonight who would trade a steak dinner for one good cold dipper of it, and the next dish you already think you know. You do not. Number 6, real succotash. The word itself is Narragansett, from the northeastern coast, and it means broken boiled corn, but that frozen bag of corn and lima beans at the store is a faded photograph of the real dish. The old succotash was fresh corn, cut off the cob, and shell beans simmered together in the pot liquor with a spoonful of bear fat or bone marrow melted through it, sometimes with squash, sometimes with a little dried meat pounded in. Corn and beans grown in the same mound, cooked in the same pot, because the old farmers knew those two plants complete each other in the field and in the body. That is a whole way of thinking about food, hiding inside a side dish everybody forgot to respect. Number 7, squash on a pole. Up along the Missouri River, our people in the Earth Lodge villages, the Mandan and Hidatsa farmers, grew gardens that fed whole towns, and they put the squash up for winter without a single canning jar. The women sliced the squash crosswise into rings, slid the rings onto long willow spits, and hung them on racks in the sun and wind until they dried down like leather. All winter, those rings went into the stew pot, where they swelled back up and drank in the broth. A whole harvest hanging on poles, safe from frost and safe from mice. I have dried squash on my own porch rail every October for 30 years, and it turns a thin winter soup into a supper. Number 8, the prairie turnip. Out on the plains, our people call it timsala, the prairie turnip. And for the Lakota and their neighbors, it was the bread of the grasslands. In June, when its little blue-purple flowers show, the diggers went out with a pointed stick, because once that flower dries and blows away, the plant hides and you will never find it. They peeled the white roots and braided the tails together into ropes as long as your arm, and hung them from the lodge poles to dry. A family's winter starch braided like a daughter's hair. Dried timsala keeps for years, and it thickens a kettle of soup the way potatoes wish they could. I have dug it beside Lakota friends in June, and I have eaten it in a buffalo stew at 20 below. And I am telling you, it earns its legend. Number 9, pemmican, the month in a pouch. First comes real dried meat, and I mean the old kind, lean buffalo or venison, sliced thin as a knife blade, and draped over racks in sun and low smoke until it snaps. No sugar, no marinade, none of that candy the gas stations sell as jerky. Then the women pounded that dry meat into a fluff, mixed it about half and half with warm rendered tallow, worked in dried choke cherries or June berries, and packed it into hide bags where the fat sealed it as it cooled. Done right. Pemmican keeps for years without a refrigerator, and a few handfuls carry a working man through a hard day. Fur traders ran a whole empire on it, and polar explorers copied it 100 years later. Our people on the plains engineered the finest travel food this continent has ever seen, centuries before anybody thought to sell one. Number 10, wojapi. Out on those same plains, the berry pot. Choke cherries, buffalo berries, whatever the season gave, cooked down slow with a little water and sweetening until the pot turns thick and glossy and dark as an August midnight. The seeds get strained out through cloth, and what is left spoons over fried bread, over meat, over dried squash, over anything that stands still long enough. No cornstarch, no gelatin, no box, just fruit and patience. I keep a jar of it on my jar wall every winter, and when the snow is on the ground, one spoonful is July. Come back to visit. Now we leave the plains and paddle north, because the next 2 foods come out of a canoe. Number 11, real wild rice. Up in the North Woods and Lake Country, our people harvest a grass seed that grows wild out of the shallow lakes, and they do it from a canoe. One person poles the boat through the rice beds. The other bends the stalks over the gunwale with one cedar stick and knocks the ripe seed loose with the other, so it rains into the hull. Back on shore, it gets parched over a slow fire, which is where that deep smoky flavor comes from, then danced on to loosen the hulls, then tossed in birch bark trays so the wind carries the chaff away. Hear me on this. The cold black paddy rice at the supermarket is a farmed cousin. True hand-parched lake rice is browner and lighter. It cooks in half the time, and it tastes like the lake and the fire both. Once you have eaten the real thing, the store kind is just packaging. Number 12, maple sugar, and I mean sugar, not syrup. Every spring, the sugar camps in the northern hardwoods boiled maple sap past syrup all the way down to a dry, crumbly sugar because sugar travels in syrup spills. They packed it into birch bark boxes in little carved wooden molds, and that was the year's sweetening, stirred into corn mush, melted over fish, pressed into small cakes for the children. A good camp might put up hundreds of pounds in one spring. When the trade stores showed up with white cane sugar by the barrel, the sugar camps went quiet one by one. But a maple tree does not care what year it is. The sap still rises every February, whether anybody hangs a bucket or not. Number 13, acorn mush. From California clear across to these Oklahoma oaks, Acorns fed more people for more centuries than almost any food on this list. And every October, Americans rake up tons of them and pay to have them hauled away. The trick the old ones knew is leaching. Acorns are full of tannin, the same bitterness as strong black tea, and eaten straight they will turn your mouth inside out and upset your stomach. So you shell them. You grind the meat into a coarse flour. Then you rinse that flour through with cool water, change after change, and the old way was a woven basket set in a clean creek until the bitterness is gone. What is left cooks into a smooth, nutty mush or a flatbread. White oak acorns need less rinsing. Red oak acorns need more. Taste as you go and be patient, because patience is the whole recipe. Number 14, camas. Friends I made at the gatherings, people raised out west where the camas prairies bloom blue every spring, taught me this one, and it comes with the sternest warning on this list. Camas is a small, wild lily bulb. The people out there dug it by the ton and roasted it in earth pits on hot stones under wet grass and soil for a full day and night, and sometimes two. That long, slow pit heat turns a starchy bulb, sweet as a roasted pear. And Lewis and Clark ate it and wrote it down. But growing in those very same meadows, there's a cousin called Death Camas. And the name is not decoration. The rule the old diggers lived by is simple. You harvest camas only when it is blooming blue, because Death Camas blooms cream white. And a bulb out of bloom keeps its secrets. Blue flower, food. White flower, walk away. That rule is older than any field guide, and it has kept people alive for a very long time. Number 15, Peaky bread. Out in the desert southwest, in the Hopi villages, I watched a grandmother make a bread so thin you could nearly read through it. She had a griddle stone, polished smooth by generations of hands, heated over a fire. She dipped her bare palm into a thin blue corn batter and wiped it across that hot stone in one motion, and in a few seconds it set into a sheet like blue-gray tissue paper, which she peeled off and rolled up soft as a scroll. Peaky. It takes years to learn and one bite to understand. And pay attention to what was in that batter. Blue cornmeal, water, and a spoonful of ash from a burned desert bush. Ash in the bread on purpose. Remember I told you my grandmother put one thing in her corn pot that the modern world decided to skip? Hold on to that ash. Number 25 is where I finally opened the jar, and the reason behind it is bigger than any one bread. Number 16, mesquite flower. That thorny mesquite tree, the rancher's curse, grows a bean pod that dries sweet right on the branch, with a flavor somewhere between molasses and cinnamon. The desert people gathered those pods by the basket, dried them hard, and pounded them into a sweet flour that made cakes and cool drinks and thickened stews, with no sugar added because none was needed. 2 rules from the old gatherers. Pick the pods straight off the tree, never up off the dirt, because pods on the ground can carry an invisible mold you do not want. And grind the whole pod, because the sweetness lives in the pod itself, not in the hard little beans. Folks now pay fancy bakery prices for mesquite flour that falls out of the sky for free across the whole Southwest every single summer. Number 17, prickly pear, both halves of it. The flat green pads, picked young in spring, get held over a flame for a minute to burn off the fine hair spines, then sliced and cooked up like green beans with a pleasant little tang. And the purple-red fruits on top ripen in late summer into something between watermelon and raspberry. The old harvesters twisted them off with wooden tongs, rolled them in sand, or singed them to strip those invisible little needles, and ate them fresh or boiled them down into a syrup that colored the whole camp's food pink. Respect the spines, especially the tiny ones you can barely see, and the desert will hand you a fruit and a vegetable off the very same plant. Now come back east with me, because this last stretch of the table grows wild within a mile of most American front doors, and everywhere on this stretch the old rule holds. Take a little from a lot of plants, leave plenty standing, and the patch feeds you again next year. We are getting close to that jar now. Number 18, cattail. The old people treated a cattail marsh like a general store. In spring, the young shoots pull up and peel down to a crisp white heart that eats like cucumber crossed with celery. In early summer, the green flower spikes boil up like little corn cobs, and the golden pollen shakes off into a bag by the cupful and bakes into cakes and breads like a flower that fell out of the sun. And in fall and winter, the fat roots wash out into a starchy paste that dried into flour when nothing else was growing. One caution, plain as I can make it, before the seed heads show, young cattail can be confused with wild iris, and iris will make you sick. Cattail grows round and spongy at the base, and there are always last year's brown seed heads standing somewhere in a true cattail patch. No brown heads anywhere. No picking. Number 19, Soshan. This one is about as Cherokee as a food can be. Soshan is the young spring green of the cut-leaf coneflower, the tall yellow flower folks plant along fences. And my people have picked it every March, since long before there were fences. You take the tender new leaves, boil them a few minutes, pour that water off, and then fry them soft in a little bacon grease, or the old way, in bear fat. It tastes deep and green, somewhere past spinach, with a mineral edge that tells you it means business. Around here, elders still trade Soshan patch locations the way other men trade fishing spots. 20 miles outside these communities, not one person in 1,000 has ever heard the word. Number 20, wild onions and eggs. Every spring here in eastern Oklahoma, the wild onions come up in the creek bottoms, skinny little green things with a bite sweeter than any store scallion. And families still gather them by the grocery sack for the community wild onion dinners, chopped and scrambled soft into eggs in a big black skillet. It is one of the last dishes on this list still holding on, and even it is thinning out year by year. The safety rule is the one your nose already knows. A wild onion smells like an onion, strong and clean, the second you break it. If a plant looks like an onion but smells like nothing, leave it in the ground because its cousins in the lily family are not your friends. Number 21, sumac lemonade. Those red velvet berry cones standing on the sumac bushes along every dry road bank in late summer make a drink the old people were enjoying 1,000 years before lemons ever reached this continent. You cut the deep red cones, you crush them gently in cool water, you let them steep for an hour, and you strain it all through tight cloth to catch the fine hairs. Cool water, not boiling, because boiling turns it bitter. Cool water, every time. What comes through is pink, tart, and bright as lemonade. And say the warning with me plainly. Poison sumac is a different plant that grows with its feet in swamp water and carries loose white berries. Red upright cones on dry ground, drink. White droopy berries in a wet bog, do not even touch it. Number 22, yaupon tea. Here's one that ought to be famous. Yaupon holly, a scrubby evergreen that grows wild across the coastal South, is the only plant native to North America that carries caffeine. The old people roasted the leaves and brewed a smooth morning tea from them, and they traded those leaves along trails that ran half the continent. Archaeologists have found traces of yaupon tea in cups dug from the great mounds near St. Louis, hundreds of miles from the nearest bush. That is how good it was. And then it was simply forgotten, while the whole country lined up to import its morning caffeine from overseas. Roast the leaves and steep them like any tea. And leaves only, mind you. Holly berries will make you sick, every kind of holly, so it is the leaf and only the leaf. Number 23, filet. If you have ever eaten gumbo down in Louisiana, you may have already tasted a native food without knowing it. Filet is nothing but the young leaves of the sassafras tree, dried and ground to a fine green powder, and it is a Choctaw gift to American cooking. Stirred into the pot off the heat, it thickens a gumbo to silk and adds a taste somewhere between root beer and bay leaf. The Choctaw were pounding sassafras leaves long before there was a Louisiana, and their powder is still sitting quietly on the spice shelf, wearing a French name with almost nobody left who remembers whose kitchen it came from. Number 24. Pawpaw. The biggest fruit native to this continent, grows wild in the creek bottoms from Georgia clear up past the Great Lakes, and most Americans have never tasted one. A ripe pawpaw is about the size of a small mango, and it eats like banana custard with a whisper of melon, soft enough to spoon. The old people ate them fresh in September and planted the seeds along their trails, which is part of why the pawpaw patches still follow the old footpaths to this day. So why is it not in stores? A ripe pawpaw lasts about 3 days. It will not ship. It will not sit on a shelf, and so the market simply pretended it did not exist. Eat the golden flesh, skip the skin and the big brown seeds, and start with one because it is rich. And that brings us to the part I promised you at the start. Go get that jar off my table. Number 25. Wood ash hominy, my grandmother's corn, the jar on my kitchen table. Here's what Ada did every fall, one step at a time. She saved the clean white ash from the fireplace, hardwood only, oak and hickory, sifted fine, no charcoal and no trash. She stirred 1 cup of that sifted ash into 2 quarts of water in an old enamel pot. 1 cup of ash, 2 quarts of water. Never an aluminum pot, because ash water is a mild lye and it will eat aluminum. She brought it to a gentle simmer and poured in the dried field corn. She cooked it low until the tough hull slipped loose from every kernel, an hour, sometimes 2. Then she rinsed. She rinsed in clean water until the water ran clear, and then she rinsed twice more, rubbing the corn between her hands. Take your time on the rinsing, there is no hurrying it. What came out was hominy, fat, tender, and smelling like corn, finally telling the whole truth. Now, the secret, the reason for the ash. Corn has a peculiar flaw. It is full of a vitamin called niacin, but the corn keeps that vitamin locked away, bound up so tight your body cannot take hold of it. Ash water is alkaline, and that alkali is the one key that turns the niacin loose. The old ones could not have named the vitamin, but they knew the why in their bones, because corn without ash leaves a body hungry in a way food should not. And the proof is written in the record books. When corn spread around the world without the ash, and when poor families across the American South lived on plain cornmeal, 3 meals a day in the early 1900s, a disease called pellagra came down on them like a plague, skin, stomach, and mind all failing. It struck about 3 million Americans and took close to 100,000 lives before the doctors finally traced it to that missing vitamin in the 1930s. 100,000. And in 10,000 years of eating corn morning and night, the people who cooked it with ash never suffered it. The modern world took my people's corn and left the ash behind. And the ash was the whole point. 10,000 years of testing. That's the guarantee on this one. And that is the kind of thing my grandmother handed me for free. There are 101 of them in the book, The Native American Way, written out plain so they do not die with me. The remedies, the wild foods, the survival skills, and the kitchen, all in one place. $17, down from $47. If the old ways matter to you, bring this one home. Now go ahead and grab your phone and open up your camera, the same one you use to take pictures. Point it at that square code on your screen and hold it steady for a second. A little link will pop up. Give it a tap, and it will take you straight to the book. And if you are watching on your phone right now, the link is waiting for you right down below in the description. Take your time. There is no rush at all. I'll wait right here. So there's the table, set one more time. 25 dishes, from the hickory soup in my grandmother's pot to the ash that made the corn whole, and every one of them still possible in an ordinary American kitchen. Tell me in the comments where your people are from. And if there's native blood in your family line like there is in so many American families, I'd be honored to hear the story. I read every single one. Next time, I am opening my grandmother's winter medicine shelf, the 4 backyard plants she put up every October for coughs, sore throats, and sleep. including the one that almost everybody harvests at the wrong time of year, which is exactly why they swear it does not work. Watto, my friends, that means thank you. Walk easy, and I'll see you down the trail.